This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
He has been behind bars for nearly 3 years now, and the myth of Bryan Kohberger, the hyper-intelligent, misunderstood grad student, has withered into something far less cinematic. What's left isn't a criminal mastermind or a misunderstood scholar. It's a man stripped of every illusion that once made him feel powerful. A man who now spends 23 hours a day alone, surrounded by the echoes of a brain that can't sit quietly without devouring itself. And I would say, eat up, brain. Eat up. Until there ain't nothing left. Prison doesn't rehabilitate minds like this. It dismantles them slowly, brick by brick, until the one thing left standing is ego. And even that starts to corrode in the dark. Let's be honest. He walked into that cell believing he could think his way out. Narcissists like Kohberger are engineers of control, meticulous planners who believe emotion is a weakness and intellect is the only currency that matters. For years, he studied behavior like a lab rat with a clipboard, convinced he could decode human fear, maybe even weaponize it. And one night, he did. And now he's the one under the microscope. Psychologically, the collapse is inevitable. When the narcissistic, sadistic personality loses control, they enter what's known in forensic psychology as narcissistic collapse, a state of internal implosion when the grandiose self-image collides with reality. And wouldn't it be great if we could televise this, maybe put it on pay-per-view or HBO or just, PBS? Maybe make it into a Ken Burns live documentary, real play film. Marv Albert doing the play-by-play. Wouldn't that be a scene? In the outside world, collapse might look like rage, desperation, or suicide. Behind bars, it's quieter. A slow decompression of the persona. The narcissist doesn't have the resources or the audience to keep the fantasy alive. The walls don't care how smart he thinks he is. So we're looking at what life is like behind bars, now roughly 3 years in. The first few months after sentencing are a psychological earthquake. And we're kind of in that area. He was in jail, but this is prison. It's a little different now. His brain used to have that constant stimulation, preparing for the trial. How to spin things. Well, that's hit a hard stop. Every dopamine source, movement, attention, power, it's gone. For men like Kohberger, that deprivation feels like death. Inmates with narcissistic or psychopathic traits often experience severe insomnia, rapid weight changes. Ooh, Brian, might put back on that weight. He's going to look like old Jared from Subway. Now, wouldn't that be a fun one? Let's put Jared from Subway in with Bryan Kohberger and dress Bryan Kohberger up as a small child. Let's see what happens. Obsessive thoughts, all of that. Their brains can't regulate without chaos. And chaos is the one thing prison denies them. At first, they rebel passive-aggressively, bureaucratically, or violently. We've seen that. We've seen the bureaucratic part. Writing the notes. My portions are not fair. Some start writing manifestos. Others lash out. The grievances or the cat and mouse with the correctional staff. It's not about winning. It's about existing. Kohberger, the man who studied emotionless observation and control, is now being studied. Every action he takes is logged, monitored, and restricted. That's not just imprisonment. It's psychological inversion. But the bigger torment isn't physical confinement. It's invisibility. Narcissists, they thrive on mirrors, real or imagined. They exist through the reflection of others. Every social interaction becomes a transaction of ego. Strip that away, and their sense of self begins to rot. Without people to impress, manipulate, or dominate, they're left with their own reflection, and that reflection doesn't worship them back. He's learning what every textbook says, but few of these men truly understand. When your identity is built on superiority, isolation is hell. Over time, the mind adapts in strange ways. Psychopaths, particularly those with high narcissistic traits, they don't tend to have emotional epiphanies, if you will. They construct new delusions. In prison, these delusions are survival mechanisms, narratives that let them reframe powerlessness into purpose. I'm being persecuted. I'll win the appeal. Well, that's not going to happen. They'll see I was right. It's not insanity, it's scaffolding. The human brain will build anything to keep itself upright. By the second or third year, something eerie happens. The agitation fades, but not because of acceptance, it's emotional shutdown. The prefrontal cortex, which regulates impulse and planning, takes over, while the limbic system atrophies from disuse. The man becomes an empty calculator, functional, orderly, but utterly hollow, even more hollow than he already is, if you can imagine that. He eats on time, sleeps on schedule, keeps his cell spotless, and feels nothing. He's running on autopilot. But still, the mind doesn't quite stay quiet. High-control offenders like Kohberger often channel their obsessive thinking into new compulsions. Legal paperwork, endless appeals, academic-style writing, physical fitness routines, anything that reasserts the illusion of control. You'll see him exercising relentlessly, crafting carefully worded statements to lawyers, maybe even starting a new project that gives him structure. Maybe he could work on his penmanship, don't you think? Have you seen his notes? God, he needs help in his writing. But it's not discipline. It's panic wearing a uniform. This isn't a story of reform. It's a story of entropy. History shows what happens to men like him over decades of confinement. Ted Bundy's charisma devolved into bitterness and religious manipulation. Ed Kemper, the so-called co-ed killer, became a model inmate who recorded audiobooks, still emotionally sterile, still devoid of remorse. Dennis Rader, BTK, performs fake remorse for attention and writes meticulous logs about himself. Their bodies aged, but their pathology never moved an inch. Kohberger is walking the same neurological corridor. He just started later. Every man like this hits the same psychological wall eventually. The dawning realization that there's no sequel coming. The audience has moved on. The papers stop printing his name. The trial transcripts collect dust. Society forgets. That's a wound no therapy can heal. Not because he misses fame, but because he loses the illusion that he matters. For someone wired like him, irrelevance is annihilation. That's when you start seeing the quiet spiral, fixation on minute injustices. Those ones that no one else even really notices. They're so small. Obsessive self-documentation, micro-control over his body, and constant scheming about external perception. How do I look? What are they saying about me? Did the media lie? We're not lying. We're telling it like it is. Like the pathetic, hollow, not interesting piece of shit that you are. It's narcissistic echo. The sound of a man talking to himself because no one else is left to listen. And yes, he'll adapt. But not in the way healthy people do. He'll adapt like a weed. Stubborn, stunted, surviving in cracks that sunlight never reaches. His intelligence becomes his thermometer. The same brain that once felt like a weapon now serves as a tutor, replaying the same loops of delusion, denial, and self-righteousness on a loop. The question isn't whether he'll break, it's how long the breaking takes. Some of these men shatter in a year, others go decades performing calm while disintegrating from the inside. The data on long-term restrictive housing is brutal. Depression rates over 50%, psychotic symptoms in nearly a third of inmates, and suicide risk up 10 times higher than general prison populations. Please, 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 please give him a rope. Even those with psychopathic resilience, the ones who seem unfazed, show neurological signs of decay. Their brain's emotional circuitry dulls, their sleep cycles fragment, and their impulse control degrades. That's what's happening behind the center block walls. Not redemption, not enlightenment, just the slow implosion of a man who thought he was the smartest in the room, now outwitted by time. He'll cling to routine like it's salvation, workouts, reading, pacing. He'll file motions he knows won't go anywhere just to prove he's still part of something. He'll replay his old fantasies, imagining interviews that will never happen, victories that will never come. He'll invent villains because he needs to believe the system is conspiring against him. It's less painful than admitting he simply lost. And yet, this is exactly what justice looks like for someone like him. No dramatic ending, no flames, no headlines, no legacy, just silence. Just the grinding, relentless normalcy of being forgotten. That's the one punishment the narcissist can't intellectualize away, the loss of audience. Every day that passes without his name trending is another nail in the coffin of his ego. And in that void, the truth festers. That all his brilliance, his discipline, his control led to nothing but a cage where the only person left to manipulate is himself. Kohberger will spend the rest of his life studying the same ceiling, telling himself he's misunderstood, that he'll prove them wrong, that the world just doesn't get it. He'll die believing that. Maybe that's the cruelest, most fitting justice of all. That he'll never truly understand what he did, because to understand it would require empathy, and empathy is the one thing his brain will never grow. So he'll sit, and the world will move on. No grand revelation, no brilliance, no redemption, just another self-made ghost, haunting the same four walls, whispering the same excuses to himself, until even he stops listening. Give me your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the podcast platform, just search Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski on YouTube. You'll find us there. You can make that same search on any social media, on any podcast platform, on YouTube, and you will find us. Hit subscribe, please, wherever you want, so you can take us with you. We do greatly appreciate that. And like I said, please, your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. We appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Tony Brueski. We'll talk again.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.